There is often a story behind a successful rugby coach that goes far beyond tactics, selections, and results, and for Dave Rennie, that story may be best understood through the people who have worked with him. Long before he became head coach of the All Blacks, Rennie was already developing a coaching philosophy built around trust, personality, leadership, and the belief that a strong team is about much more than what happens for 80 minutes on a rugby field. His journey has taken him from teaching physical education and running a pub to coaching at the highest level of international rugby. But those who know him say the same qualities have followed him throughout his career. One of the clearest examples came during his time with Glasgow Warriors, when Rennie made an unusual request that immediately revealed how differently he viewed team culture. Shortly after arriving in Scotland, he gathered his players and showed them footage of the Fiji rugby team singing together before a match. The players, including Finn Russell and Hugh Jones, watched as the Fijians performed their pre-match hymn, and the reaction from the Glasgow squad was reportedly one of confusion. But Rennie had a reason. He wanted his players to understand that confidence and connection could help them become more comfortable taking risks on the field. His message was simple. If players were willing to stand together and sing loudly in front of everyone, perhaps they would also become less afraid of making mistakes when the pressure arrived during a match. It was a small moment, but it reflected something that would become central to Rennie's coaching style. He wanted players to feel that they belonged, that they could express themselves, and, most importantly, that they could trust the people around them. That philosophy helped shape a memorable period at Glasgow Warriors, where Rennie spent 3 seasons and guided the team to a Pro 14 final, as well as the last 8 of the Champions Cup. Yet, for the players who worked under him, the memories were not only about results. They remember team quizzes, unusual fitness sessions, post-match gatherings, music, laughter, and, very often, Rennie's guitar. Former Scotland international Ryan Wilson has described Rennie as one of the best coaches he ever worked with, but he has placed even greater emphasis on the coach's character away from rugby. According to Wilson, Rennie understood when a player needed a firm word and when he needed support. That balance became one of his defining strengths. Wilson also remembers how much Rennie valued leadership and why he made the surprising decision to appoint him as co-captain of Glasgow Warriors despite the back rower having experienced disciplinary problems earlier in his career. For Wilson, the appointment was unexpected, but it showed that Rennie was looking beyond a player's reputation and focusing on what he could contribute to the group. The lesson Wilson took from that experience was that leadership is not simply about what happens on the rugby field. It is also about looking after teammates, understanding different personalities, and creating an environment where people can perform at their best. That idea helps explain why Rennie's coaching journey has been so distinctive. His professional playing career was limited, including a non-cap appearance for the Cook Islands, but he built his reputation through coaching rather than through a long international playing career. Before entering professional rugby coaching, he worked as a teacher and even ran a pub, which he named the Lonely Goatherd after a song from The Sound of Music. Those details may seem unrelated to international rugby, but they help paint a picture of someone comfortable around people and willing to follow his own instincts. At Glasgow, that instinct was particularly visible in the way he handled his squad. Rennie demanded standards, but he also understood that players could not be treated as robots. He wanted them to work hard, compete seriously, and accept accountability, while also enjoying the environment they were part of. Wilson has recalled that after the rugby business was finished, Rennie could quickly switch off from the intensity of the match. If a performance needed to be addressed, it was dealt with in the changing room. Once that conversation was finished, the players could move forward. That ability to separate disappointment from the next challenge became another important part of his leadership. Rather than allowing one poor performance to dominate the following days, Rennie encouraged his players to learn from what happened and then return to work. It was a philosophy that created a strong bond within the Glasgow Warriors group, and that bond became especially visible when the coronavirus pandemic brought their season to an abrupt end. As restrictions were introduced and players prepared to leave, Wilson and co-captain Callum Gibbons did not want Rennie to depart without a proper farewell. The pair reportedly traveled to Rennie's home in Stirling with beer, determined to give their coach a memorable send-off. Rennie lived near the Wallace Monument, and the setting provided the backdrop for an emotional goodbye. Knowing that oysters were among his favorite foods, the players arranged for a large delivery, although the original order was not ready in time and another batch had to be brought from Glasgow. The group then spent time together outside, observing the restrictions of the period while sharing food, drinks, and memories. For Wilson, the moment said a great deal about the relationship Rennie had built with his players. It was not simply a coach leaving a club. It was a group of people saying goodbye to someone who had become an important part of their lives. That human connection has remained a major feature of Rennie's coaching career, and it is now being tested at the highest level with the All Blacks. His appointment as head coach of New Zealand represents the biggest challenge of his career, and the pressure surrounding the role is enormous. The expectations attached to the All Blacks are unlike those at almost any other team in world rugby. Every result is analyzed, every selection is debated, and every performance is measured against a long history of success. Yet Rennie has approached the challenge in a way that reflects the same principles he developed earlier in his career. Instead of allowing the pressure to dominate the environment, he has worked to create a group that can remain focused, connected, and confident. His early results have certainly helped. Under Rennie, the All Blacks entered this stage of their campaign with 6 consecutive victories, including 3 Nations Championship wins followed by victories over 3 of South Africa's URC-based franchises. The performances have improved as the tour has progressed. The opening victory over the Stormers exposed areas that needed work, but the All Blacks responded strongly against the Sharks and Bulls, producing more convincing displays and building momentum ahead of their biggest challenge. Now comes South Africa, the reigning world champions and one of the most formidable teams in international rugby. The setting only adds to the occasion, with Rennie preparing for a test at Ellis Park, a venue deeply connected with South African rugby history. For any coach, this would be a major examination. For Rennie, it is another opportunity to show whether his philosophy can translate into success against the very best. The fascinating part is that his approach is not based solely on tactical detail. It is built around people. Ryan Wilson's memories of Rennie playing guitar, singing songs, sharing a drink with the squad, and then returning to business on Monday may seem like small details, but they reveal the culture the coach has tried to create wherever he has worked. The guitar is perhaps the perfect symbol. It represents the side of Rennie that players remember away from the training field. Relaxed, approachable, and willing to connect with people. But that does not mean standards disappear. Wilson has made it clear that Rennie can be demanding when necessary, and that he will challenge players when their performance or attitude requires it. The difference is that the criticism does not define the relationship. Once the issue has been addressed, the player has an opportunity to move forward. That combination of honesty and empathy could be particularly valuable for an All Blacks team facing the pressure of a major international series. Rugby at this level can become overwhelming, and players need more than technical instructions. They need clarity, confidence, and trust. Rennie appears to understand that, and his career suggests he has been building that understanding for years. From a classroom and a pub to Glasgow, from the Cook Islands connection to international coaching, and now into the demanding world of the All Blacks, his rise has not followed the conventional path. But perhaps that is exactly what makes his story so compelling. The man now standing on the touchline for New Zealand has spent much of his career learning how to bring different personalities together, how to create belief, and how to make players feel part of something bigger than themselves. Against South Africa, those qualities will be tested like never before. The result will ultimately be decided by rugby, but behind the tactics and selection decisions will be the same human element that has followed Dave Rennie throughout his journey. Trust your players, challenge them when necessary, give them room to express themselves, and never underestimate the power of a team that genuinely enjoys working together. For a coach who once asked a group of Glasgow Warriors players to sing a Fijian hymn because he wanted them to become comfortable taking risks, the next chapter with the All Blacks represents perhaps the biggest test of that philosophy yet. There is often